What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Dragzine Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Editor Brian Wagner, and this week we've got Street Outlaw star Scott Taylor. Scott, what's going on?
What's up, man? Thank you for having me on.
No problem, man. No problem at all. Great to have you on this show. I'm sure you're breathing a small sigh of relief after that grueling schedule, but I know people see in the background, or the listeners might not hear this on the if they're just doing audio only. You're taking a small break from racing, but you guys are full tilt busy working on the car, right?
Absolutely. It's everybody's sent me messages saying enjoy the break, but I mean, it seems like we're having a break, but it's not a break at all. It's actually very brutal. We got done with the schedule for NPK, and that was many weeks straight. We'd have a few weeks off, and then we'd do another 4 weeks straight. So that was brutal, just keeping the car running. Well, we had about 2 to 3 weeks to prepare for America's List that's going to be filmed here pretty soon, the next few days, actually. But so I've been working nonstop on the old car. The ones that can see, it's John Doe. It's behind me here. But we had to switch it back over and get it ready for the street, as we had took many things off of it to get through the NPK schedule with the other car. So if it was on here, I had robbed it. If it said Fuel Tech on it, it was in my trailer for a spare. If it was a Pro Charger or a Hemi, everything on this car was off of it.
Yeah, that's kind of the nature of the game. When we saw the schedule come out for NPK, the first thing that popped into my mind was these poor cats, man. Their maintenance schedule is just out the window at this point, because they've got a lot of back-to-back racing, and that's definitely not easy on the pocketbook or the maintenance, right?
No, it was very brutal. It's the hardest thing that I've ever had to do in one season. I think it was 15 races. And I mean, with the funding that we have, the budget that we're on, it was very hard. I mean, we had to basically super glue some things together just to make the next race.
Oh yeah. I saw some pictures of the cars towards the end. I'm like, you see those pictures, and if you know the cars, you know what's going on. You're like, man, those cats are just doing everything they can to keep that rickshaw moving down the road at this point.
Yeah. We brought out the new car towards the end of the season, and we had a unfortunate deal. We had a fire, and man, it was very hard to make the next week after having the fire. We had to totally redo all the wiring under the hood. It got the engine. They would fire is tough because you don't realize what all is burnt. You start tearing it apart, and, fuel lines, oil lines, air, CO2 lines, shock sensors. I mean, just everything is burnt up, and the things you didn't think was burnt up somehow got shorted out in the fire, and it burned it up, even though it didn't look burnt up.
Yeah. Fire's awesome for, finding stuff and breaking stuff that you don't realize is broken, or you think you fixed, you haven't fixed, and you just, it might show up 6 months later, even after you think you have it fixed,
That's right. Absolutely. I don't wish a fire on nobody. That's probably one of the roughest deals that I've ever had to fix. We've bumped into the wall. We've had some small light hits, but one thing about wrecking a car is you just about know what's wrong with it. You can look around and see what's wrong, and you can fix it and go from there. But with a fire, anything electrical, it don't like fire.
No. Yeah. It's one thing to let the magic smoke out of electronics, but it's even worse to expose electronics to their mortal enemy, heat. They don't get along.
Yep. Heat and voltage surge and just a touch of a short, they don't like it.
No. I despise electrical problems with the fury of 1,000 white hot suns. It's just, there is no easy way, it seems, to ever diagnose those issues ever.
That's right.
Even when you go by the classic saying, it's got to be a ground, check your grounds. And then it's absolutely infuriating after you check all the grounds, and that's not the problem. You want to throw stuff at the car.
Absolutely. I've been down that road before. We've had, electrical issues, and of course everybody suggests it's a ground issue. We've grounded the heads, and we've, run extra grounds from the back of the car to the front of the car, and it's usually never the problem for me. It's usually something else, but that's the first thing everybody suggests.
Did you check the grounds? Yes, all the grounds. I've made new grounds. It's not the grounds.
That's right.
Now, no prep racing has really been gaining popularity in what we'll call it the mainstream for the past couple of years. It's been around for a while, and you've been doing it for a while. Kind of, what's the story? How did you get into no prep racing? Because it's not your typical drag racing path for most of us.
We've street raced since we were kids. Me and a friend of mine, Jared By, he still races and tunes to this day. But me and him, when we were in high school, even before we had our license, we were getting anything we could get our hands on and racing it on the street and playing and having fun. And that's sort of where we got our start. I always went out to Hub City Dragway, which is a local track. It's closed down now, but it was local to me here. And me and another friend of mine, we had been street racing and we'd been caught, and we were trying to stay out of trouble as much as possible because we live in a pretty small town, and we thought about doing the backwards racing, racing from the shutdown area back towards the start line. And we talked about that for 4 or 5 years, probably at least 4 years or so. And then we ended up having one. I think it was like 2014. We had our first one, and man, we loved it. And from there, we went from backwards racing to no prep racing pretty quickly.
It's funny. I used to honestly thought no prep racing was the dumbest thing on earth until I went to one. And then it clicked. I'm like, I see where I'm like, oh, this is, like street racing, but I don't have to worry about running from the cops. Yep. And there's EMTs and fire trucks right here. I'm like, all right, this is smart. And that's, I think a lot of people get a bad and wrong idea about what no prep racing really is because they kind of concentrate, oh, you're going to wad a car up. I've seen bracket racers crash on very well prepped surfaces. You can crash no matter where you are. It presents a different level of challenge in racing, I think.
It absolutely does. It's the skill level of the driver obviously I feel like you have to be a little bit better driver to do the no prep deal. You can wreck anywhere though. I mean, I don't care if it's radial racing or bracket racing or no prep racing. Like you said, you can wreck on any of those surfaces. But I just like the challenge. I mean, it's challenging to go through anything on a track that they just swept off. They didn't put any glue down. They didn't drag it. They just swept it off and we went racing. And to lay down some of the licks, I've been 380s on nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. And that's just crazy. If you'd have asked me, say back in 2014 or 15, if I thought anybody would go 380s on no prep, I would say it wasn't possible. We were going 440s back then, and so I thought we were flying, and it's just kept getting faster.
And it's interesting again with no prep racing is that you'll hear, oh well, they're getting a lot of rubber down on the starting line, this, that, and the other, which is absolutely true. You put enough cars down any surface, anytime, you even look on the streets, you're going to see people putting rubber down. But you got to remember, the entire racing surface isn't like that. And once you get out past the safety and comfort of those first 60 or so feet, you're where eagles fly, and you got to have your stuff right and tight if you want to go fast and keep it right side down. That's
right. I mean, yes, the start line does get sticky, and just like what you said, on the street, guess what? The start line gets sticky, but 150, 200 foot out, that's where it gets sketchy. You better have your car right. You better know how to drive, or you're gonna get in trouble pretty quick.
Yeah, and it kind of really brings that phrase to mind that Shannon Morgan says, no hero shit. I mean, that should be the motto for drag racing, no matter what level you're at. But no prep racing, I have seen people that run out of talent and real estate in a hurry, and that's really when you get in trouble, in my opinion.
It is, and I'm guilty of probably driving it too far and to pick up a win, but I just, when it gets real bad, I try to lift, I try not to push it too far. Every time when I suit up, that's the main thing my crew guy Art tells me. Ever since he's heard that, from Shannon, he when I suit up, he gives me a fist bump and he says, no hero shit, And I tell him, I said, well, I may have to use a little bit of it.
Yeah. Maybe not Superman, maybe Batman, right?
Yeah. I may have to use a little here because he always tells me that, you know, and we're going up on it with a first pair down and it's been raining for 4 days, you know. I'm like, well, it's going to be pretty rough. You may not want to watch.
Yeah. Just avert your eyes past the 60-foot mark because things are going to get weird.
Absolutely. He said I'm used to signing my name on the racetrack. He said it looks like an S when I go down through there.
Yeah. And I've watched from the starting line, and honestly, at times it can be hard to tell the difference between a pro mod prepped race and a no prepped race, depending on the driver and the surface and the power level, because these cars that the horsepower they're making, they're going to get fussy no matter what.
Absolutely. They're a handful, you know. It's crazy, you know, we'll make 2 or 3 passes, it don't even bobble, and then we'll make some passes that we did good to make the trip, you know, that it's tough making repeating without pedaling, you know. That's our goal, is not to have to pedal the car.
And you know, you mentioned you did some street racing, and you've raced on the show, on the street, as well as on the track in a no prep setting. You know, which is harder, and kind of what are the differences between the two when it comes to driving and tuning? Kind of, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think some people might, I don't know if they necessarily get confused, or they might not understand that there's a big difference between the street and the track.
Absolutely. You know, there's crowns on the street. There's rocks. I mean, you never know what you're going to be racing on. It's definitely a tuner's game. I feel like it takes some of the money out of it. You know, I think it's more who puts in the most work, who tests the most, and who is very good on, you know, tuning. From shocks to 4-link to power management. The street is definitely the equalizer of $1 million race team and $100,000 race team.
Oh, totally. It's funny to watch, you know, if you go back in time, and I've had Chris Hamilton on the show, I've had Kyle Loftus from 1320 on the show, and you watch some of the OG, the original Street Outlaw action before it was a show, when there was a rather large, dark-skinned man in the pickup truck that sounds a lot like Big Chief with his face blurred out, you know, talking about what's going on. You see these cars that you see now on TV trying to boogie on the streets. And it's a completely different game trying to get down like that.
Absolutely, it is, and my favorite part about it is how much of an equalizer it is. I would rather race on the street year round, but for the fans of the sport, we do it at the racetrack, and because I tell you, none of us afford to do it without, you know, our support group, you know, our fans. When we go to the racetrack, everybody really supports us, and, you know, everybody's buying merch year round. So that's the reason we do it at the racetrack. As far as fun, what gets my adrenaline pumping is the street. It's amazing how it feels to go to a town you've never been in and unload a car on a dark road. There's nobody around, and you don't know what the next road is. You just know you need to make a test pass. And I tell you, the adrenaline's pumping. So unfortunately, I've never been on drugs, but I would imagine it's about like a drug, because it's very addicting.
It's interesting that you word it that way, because again, it's one of those, what's that phrase? If you know, you know. When you've been to a legit, like I say, legit sketchy street race, you don't want to see a lot of people there. It's just the crews and the cars. That's it. Anytime I see more than the bare minimum people at a street race, I get nervous for safety. And the more people know, the more likely that, you know, Johnny Law is going to show up, right?
Absolutely. You know, I would street race more if they didn't have so many people at some of these cash days and stuff. You know, when you pull up and there's 150 spectators and 25 cars, you know, 12 of them's racing, the other ones are just trying to make test passes. Typically, I can tell you right then, the race probably ain't gonna happen. No. You know, too many people. So I like just lining up and running one-on-one and getting it done and going back and talking about it, and hanging out, and maybe do it again if they want to do it again, you know.
And it's safety too. I mean, there's been some unfortunate tragic events happen when you have too many people at street.
Yeah.
in the wrong places. I mean, there is no way around it to say it otherwise. Illegal street racing is very dangerous. Shouldn't do it, but we do it anyway because, we're not the sharpest knives in the crayon box. But
Yeah.
that's, I think, where no prep track racing comes in because, on the TV show, you can't have people there watching. But when you guys go to the track to race for an MPK event, that's when you can actually interact with your fans in a semi-sane environment.
Absolutely. That's the fun part about, NPK is we get to see everybody that's been supporting us all year, and we get to shake their hand and talk to them and let them see, what we do to the race car every round. Most people don't understand the amount of work that we do just in 45 minutes between rounds. They think we just cool it off and go back up there. We do an hour and a half work in 45 minutes between rounds. And on the street thing, all the safety deal, I was pretty adamant about it. There was never any crowds when I first started street racing. It was just me and somebody else and a few of our buddies street racing. Well, in 2014 or so, when we started doing it on a bigger scale, there would be people lined up down the roads. And
that's bad news.
And that's what I told them. BJ was doing the flagging at the time down at the pad in New Orleans. And I told him, I said, look, I'm not leaving the starting line. I said, I'll sit here all night. I'm not leaving the starting line till at least these 300 people are behind me, and he started waving his light around saying, hey, the man said he ain't going to leave until y'all move back. And guess what? People started moving. And I'm super proud of him because he has sort of kept that deal ever since then. He tries to keep people safe and makes people move back for the most part.
Yeah, race cars are unpredictable no matter what surface they are on, especially, even when you're no prep racing on a drag strip, that the conditions change, things change so quickly that, like you were saying earlier, you could be consistent and not consistent, and having that extra layer of safety there is super important.
Absolutely. If I wreck and flip in a ditch, that's me, but I definitely wouldn't be able to live with myself if I injured somebody else. They should know better not to stand at the 8th mile, but also I should know better than sending a 3,000 horsepower car down with somebody standing at the 8th mile.
And, talking about a 3,000 horsepower race car, you talked about it's tricky to run on the street. Well, what's tricky about trying to no prep race on a drag strip where people think that there's, a lot of traction there, but it's its own different animal, right?
It is. The track can be as tricky as the street. I know that sounds crazy, but so what happens, like the first 60 to 100 feet, maybe even 150 feet, like we were saying, it gets sticky. Well, the next 150 feet or next 300 feet, is not sticky. So we got the tire all wadded up because it's stuck to the racetrack. Well, then it comes unglued, so that's a tough point to get through, and it creates tire shake. If you look at all these cars, NPK, all the quarters are busted, there are cracks everywhere. It's tough because tire shake is brutal when you go from, the surface is not consistent. So it's very brutal on the race car and the driver. It literally feels like somebody's punching you in the kidneys when it starts tire shaking. Nobody has to tell you to lift. I can tell you that.
Yeah. And that's why I've talked about this before. You'll see nitro drivers and top alcohol drivers wear mouthpieces, and even pro mod drivers, because tire shake will blur your vision. It's like a very disorienting process. And I've seen cars tire shake on a prep surface so hard that they rattle doors off. And that's within the first 60 feet. Like for viewers and listeners, imagine that you're at full tilt boogie, that converter's locked up, all the power's in, and then it tire shakes. That's the recipe for not a good time.
Yep. And it breaks everything. I mean, you can break a crankshaft from tire shake. So think about a billet piece of steel, that breaks from tire shake. That just lets you know how violent that is.
Oh, and I'm sure that you guys have to address that in your power management on the vehicle as well, to kind of like, you want to basically be able to kind of like feather in that way. If you get into that tire shake, I'm assuming that way it's not nearly as violent and jarring to the entire car.
It's tough, because typically people monitor, wheel speed to get down the racetrack. So they're trying not to allow the wheel to spin too much. And so there's nothing that really protects you from it underspinning, really. So when it underspins and the tires really gets distorted, it starts flapping and starts shaking. So that's a hard thing to get rid of in the tune-up, really. The tire shake is probably the hardest thing to get rid of.
And that throws everything off, those suspension off, makes the car want to do wonky things. Whereas, on the street, you're pretty much fighting constant slip, right? Which is a little bit easier to deal with.
Absolutely. Long as it's not a terrible, terrible road, it's easier on the street for me because you take the tire shake completely out of the equation.
Yeah, you look at it, it's like old school nitro cars, back in the day when they used to do 1,320-foot burnouts. It's essentially a more controlled kind of tire slip almost, right?
Absolutely. It's a controlled spin all the way down. And even though it's spinning, it's still going fast. I mean, you never know what the street's going to take until you make a pass on it. We've had streets that we couldn't go but 5.0 on, 520. And then we've also been on streets that we went 430s and 440s on.
That's so hard to wrap your mind around, especially, the numbers you were throwing out for, running in the threes on a no prep surface is just, that to me is amazing considering how much that's the ultimate, I think, balance between horsepower and power management to be able to get down the track that quick and fast.
Absolutely. And what really blows my mind is I'm just guessing here. There's over 10 cars in the NPK that runs faster than 390s. I mean, that's what's crazy. Never did I ever see that happening.
And again, you got those 10, but the thing is the 10 below them would have just as much of a possibility to win, because when you're going that fast, that window of opportunity to not make a mistake shrinks, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got beat a couple times this season. I'll just say it. I mean, it's cars that run 420s. I got out there and the car shook and, headed towards the center line, and I had to lift, and if you have to pedal one time early in the run, a 420 car will drive around you.
Yeah. You've lost all your momentum.
Yep. If you have to pedal before 200 feet, it's over with. Now, if you're out 300-400 foot, you can pedal and get away with it. But if you burp the throttle in the first 200 foot, it's over with.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to, like we were talking about earlier, not being a hero. If there's a boatload of money on the line, maybe you might get a little bit brave. But the problem is that bravery on a no prep surface is a quick way to find your car in the chassis shop.
Absolutely. Speaking of bravery and money, I'll tell you a quick little story. We were racing for a big amount of money. It was $20,000 per side, and it was one pass. And the guy helping me with the car, his name was Jody Hadley. And I'm getting ready to pull in. I've already done my burnout. I've done everything. So I'm getting ready to pull up to the line on the street to race. He opens the door, and he sticks his head up to my helmet and says, "Hey, man, don't worry about it. Don't be a hero. It's just money." I'm like, 20. So he reminds me we got $40,000 pot as I'm staging. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So it's tough sometimes because we do run for some big money. That don't happen that often as far as that much money, but that was a long time rival grudge race deal that just got out of hand. But
yeah, that's another part, I think, of the no prep racing and grudge racing, kind of how they intertwine as well, because I've seen at some events some extracurricular non-pot cash exchange hands anywhere from a couple $100 to a couple $grand sliding back and forth, and it can go the way that you don't think it's going to go, because again, that surface makes it the great equalizer.
Absolutely. It's crazy how much money does change hands, and I'm surprised, there's not more gambling than there is. There's a good bit of gambling, but I'm surprised there's not more than what goes on, actually.
Yeah, I was at one of Duck's races for that big race between J.R. Gray and the other gentleman had I always forget his name. Chris Toot was driving that white Corvette of the guys. J.R. was driving Ghostbusters or Jason X. And the amount of money that changed hands that one race is like it's Bitcoin. That's cryptocurrency money these guys were throwing around. It was amazing to watch, and it made my stomach hurt watching those dudes lose money. I couldn't imagine being the one that's got to hand over that stack of cash.
Yep. I'm trying to think of what race it was the other day that was it was like it was 1,000th or something. It was huge money. And that may be the one you're talking about. I was thinking it may have been Stevie Fast, but they had a huge grudge race the other day, and I looked at the margin of victory, and it was like 1,000th or something. It was crazy.
Oh, that was Stevie Fast and Scruggs down in Texas.
Okay, yeah, was it like 1,000th or something? It was something crazy.
1,000th of a second could cost you tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what they were running for, but it wasn't change. It was major money.
Yeah, it was definitely more than the down payment on the Toyota Yaris, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you could have bought you a fleet of them.
Right on. Well, we're going to take a quick break here on the Dragzine Podcast with Scott Taylor. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the misconceptions people have about the Street Outlaws show. We'll be right back.
ThompCams is excited to introduce the Evolution hydraulic roller lifters, the first lifters ever created using our patented hydraulic cartridge technology. CompCam's Evolution hydraulic roller lifters are a revolutionary new patented tape tappet. They provide the most consistent and reliable performance of any lifters offered in the aftermarket. A combination of self-contained hydraulic cartridge with a thick wall lifter body and accompanying reduced oil volume that is less affected by oil aeration delivers the most consistent bleed rates between each lifter on the market. You can learn more at compcams.com.
All right, we're back here on the Dragzine Podcast with Scott Taylor, pilot of the John Doe Tracto series of vehicles. As seen on TV, No Prep Kings and Street Outlaws New Orleans, regular Street Outlaws. It's like I think there's 1,000,001 street. They might do Street Outlaws on my own street at some point. Nothing wrong with that. It's just it's awesome to see the way the brand has spread, and it's really honestly impacted drag racing in a positive way. Now, what I always find highly entertaining are some of the keyboard cowboys that put stuff out there about the show. And we're going to play a game with Scott where he tells us about his favorite misconceptions that people have about Street Outlaws and what actually goes on the show. Scott, let's hear about some of your favorites that you see that just like when you're in the know, they make you chuckle.
Probably the biggest one is a lot of my fans, fans and non-fans, I guess you'd call that haters. So fans and haters, some of them will post, just let Discovery buy you another motor. You crashed your car, let Discovery just buy you another one. Man, it does not work that way. I mean, we are working on our own dime. Yes, we make a few dollars doing it, but it's nothing to buy a race car with. I mean, it's enough money to get there and keep us racing. But so that's one of the biggest ones. The other is people think it's scripted. That's probably my number one, really. If I could change the order of them, my number one deal is people think it's scripted. Well, I can tell you, I've been working till about 3 or 4 in the morning for the last 2 weeks getting this car ready and the John Doe car, getting it ready for the street. And I can tell you, with the amount of work and time and effort that me and my crew does to get there, it's not scripted. We're not laying down. I can tell you the racing is 100% real. And the passion that I share with these other guys we race with is above anything I've ever seen in any sport.
Now, I'm going to say something, and I want to, again, going along that line about the misconceptions to maybe help people understand. You can agree or disagree or correct me, that what you see on the TV as far as we'll call it the drama, that is to a certain point, I'm not going to say scripted, but put together in a certain way to make it interesting, because you have to do that to make the show interesting. But the second those stage bulbs are lit, it's as real as it gets, right?
Yep, absolutely. And even that drama, it's not scripted. The rules for NPK are set to maybe cause a little drama. That's what I would say. So it causes itself. So they just film what's happening, but they didn't script for two people to fight. You know, they didn't tell Bobby to jump on Larry Larson or Larry Larson to jump on Bobby. Well, because the tree deal, you can guess and get away with it. You can get a 4/10 advantage. Well, when he guessed on Larson, Larson told him before they even raced, he said, look, you guess we're fighting. Well, that don't scare Bobby. So Bobby guessed, and then they fought at the end. So I had to break them up. It's not scripted. It's just the rules almost, entice you to run into a few problems along the way.
Yeah, and again, it's like I remember I've been to 2 of the No Prep King events. I was at the Bowling Green race years ago, and then I was at the Columbus race this year. And we did the 10K drag shootout, so I know how this stuff is put together. And you have to do, like, for backloaded terms, storylines. If you just put out there like just the raw footage of people being filmed and whatnot, and just kind of let it flow naturally, it would be as awkward as this TV show The Office. 100%, honestly. It would not be nearly as interesting. But you take the personalities, and you don't have, trust me, you do not have to wind some of these guys up. Some of them, well, maybe some of them might need a little bit of prodding, but it's not much. Some of these dudes are like, I'm friends with Goad. Goad cracks me up. People get the wrong impression about that guy. I think because of the way he's framed on the show, he's a super nice dude. But trust me when I say it does not take much to light that man's fuse, and he will give you what you want. But at the end of the day, he is absolutely as genuine as they come, as well as a lot of you guys are.
Absolutely. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not scripted, but they can also show a side of you that may have happened just for an instance.
Yep, exactly.
That may be who you are, but maybe you said something and they caught it maybe out of context a little bit or something like that. Things like that do happen along the way. But far as scripted, it's definitely not scripted. Storyline, I mean, yeah, like, Team NOLA versus Oklahoma, that's a storyline, but they're not telling us what happens or what to do or, anything like that. But they come up with a storyline and we just fall into that storyline,
Yeah, it develops naturally, and they accentuate it on the show to keep people interested, because trust me, there's multiple storylines going on with all kinds of people, and you find the one that is literally the one that's going to get people interested to watch the show and root for so and so, and it's interesting to watch how it happens, but it's definitely a big misconception that everything is scripted and winners are predetermined.
Absolutely. Yeah, they definitely push us to be, as best as we can be and as fast as we can be. And like you said before, when we light the stage bulb, it is game time. I don't care if it's a Team NOLA guy or if it's Oklahoma. We all feel the same way. It's a drag race.
Yeah, there are no team rules like there are, or team orders like allegedly there have been in other racing organizations given out that cause drama. It's that I think is what makes the show to me so interesting, is that it captures that vein. And I've said this before, to me, Street Outlaws filled the void that Attitude Era WWF had and WCW had without the scripted drama. It taps into guys wanting to see like that mindset of storylines with competition.
Absolutely.
That's what it is.
If you'd have told me we would be this far in with Street Outlaws, I would have said it would have never made it this far. I figured it would be a 3 or 4 year thing and it would be over with. I would have to look back, but I think I'm on my 7th, contractual year with them. And I never dreamed it would be this far in, but next year is looking like it's going to be the biggest year we've had yet. I mean, from what I understand, and don't hold me to this number, but I'm hearing like 17 NPK races next year.
And And I know the schedule hasn't been released, but I think there's a track that accidentally leaked where one of the races was going to be, that I'm excited to see it's coming back to that location because it's a great location. We won't mention it here because I don't want to get Sam mad at me or anything like that. If people are smart, they can put the dots together and figure it out. So we won't spill the beans, but from what I've, just that one location alone, you can tell that, again, it's about trying to accentuate the racing, really, and the personalities.
It is. They do a fantastic job of keeping people interested. I mean, you know, they film us doing whatever we're doing, working on the car, and somehow they make that interesting. And that's you know, they do a good job doing that, you know, because a lot of times just working on a car is pretty boring, but they pull out the best of us, you know, when they're trying to make a show out of it.
And switching gears here, you know, racing in the outlaw world, you visit some interesting tracks and see some wild things. Doesn't matter whether you're prep racing, no prep racing. There's I always joke about this. There's stories about on the road getting to the track of what you've seen. You know, what are some of the more memorable, interesting things you've seen on the road doing no prep racing and just, you know, at tracks, things like that, that, you know, people would get a kick out of hearing?
I mean, we've had goods and bads. You know, ups and downs. We've, you know, we've been to some of the greatest tracks in the country. One of my favorites, we didn't go there this year, but one of my favorites is Bristol. Man, I love racing at Bristol. Just pulling out on that racetrack makes you feel like $1 million. But we've got to see, you know, landmarks that my kids would have never got to see. We've, you know, been Statue of Liberty, the Arch. I mean, we've been all over the country sightseeing, you know, because everything's close to a racetrack, because we've been to every racetrack in the country just about it. One of the downs would be this year. We were headed to a racetrack and a drunk driver collided with us in the toter home. That was a very, very bad deal. It could have been a lot worse. And that was our misfortune this year. You know, we just got a new toter home, or new to me toter home. And like I say, the drunk driver deal was rough. And the guy was livid. I mean, he was super mad at everybody. And to see all that go down, it was probably one of the craziest things I've ever seen. He was hitting the officers, and it was pretty bad.
Oh, so you got the full cops experience.
Yeah, like I was sitting in the RV looking out, like looking through the window, like the window was going to protect me, you know. But I mean, this guy was going nuts, and but yes, we basically filmed an episode of Cops.
Yeah. Pro tip, kids: don't fight with the police because they don't fight fair. All their friends jump in. You're not going to win.
Right. The cops are always going to win.
Yeah, you might get a couple good licks in, but it's like dealing with security at the track. You might
before it's over with, you're going to hurt.
Yeah, and I have seen that at events at some. We won't name the facilities, but I have seen some places where the fans have decided that they wanted to mess around and find out with security, thinking that they were a little bit bigger and tougher than one security guard. But when security guard's friends showed up, they had a bad day.
Yeah, my kids had I got twins. They're 11 years old. But they had a report, you know, for school. I told them, I said, just pick one thing that we did this summer. Don't tell them everything. I said, because they won't believe you.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to believe you went all these places in one summer, but that's how busy our summer was.
You know, kind of going with stories off the road. Do you have any fun fan interaction stories? You know, I've seen, again, I've been to these races and seen people wait, you know, you guys out there signing autographs for 3 hours. I've seen people present to you, like in Columbus, the dude with the individual special made baseball cards, scale models, sign my wife. I've seen some wild stuff. Literally, I know I saw a guy ask someone to sign his wife. What are some of your interesting reactions or fan interactions?
It may be crossing a few lines, but I'm gonna go with this one anyway. So I'm standing at the back of my trailer, and I won't say what town or anything we were at, but we were at a racetrack, and we were completely sold out of merchandise. I had sold everything we had, and a lady walks up and she asked, and I said, "Look, we're totally sold out. You know," I said, "if you have something, I'll be happy to sign it." And well, anyway, she proceeds to pull down her top, And my wife comes out of the camper and she says, "Keep on moving, lady." So my wife did not allow that to happen. So that was one of the ones I'll never forget anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's there's a lot going on there, and that could have ended a lot of different ways.
Yeah, my wife is super nice to everybody, but she didn't like them being out in front of me.
Yeah, she that definitely yeah, like you said, that crossed a couple lines, and it's like, you know, I like the enthusiasm, but let's dial it back a couple notches, right?
Yeah. I put the top back on the marker real quick before she saw me. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's that. And again, that's one of those things that happens where people like, it's hard for people to grasp the crazy stuff that happens on the road and you see as a racer, right?
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, we've I've signed, you know, legs, feet, shoes, dog collars. It's great, really. I mean, for people to want us to do that shows the support, for our sport, and it's fantastic, the enthusiasm that some of these fans have.
Have you ever run into a fan that is not exactly a fan, or it gets angry because you beat their favorite driver? Because that's one of the cool things about No Prep King, or No Prep Racing in general, and with the Street Outlaws, is people are passionate about who they like. And if you beat the person that they like, they might take issue with it.
Yeah. Probably the only time I've ever had anything like that happen, I would call it a misunderstanding as far as what the fans saw, but it's definitely old, and I hate even bringing it up. But when me and Jeff Lutz got into a little staging duel up in the mountains, some of the fans in the stands didn't really understand what happened. See, he double bulbed me. He turned on 2 bulbs. I didn't have any on, and the tree was falling really quick that weekend. So I felt like I was at a huge disadvantage if I staged. So I had them back him out. Well, believe it or not, the whole stand started booing me for backing out. They didn't realize what had happened. And so I had this one guy like heckling me at the trailer, so I'm still signing autographs and taking care of people, and I'm still in the race. Well, he kept coming by the trailer, just, you suck, and just like, he just kept heckling me all day long. And, well, anyway, the next year we went back after he saw it on TV, he come back and apologized to me and said, "I had no idea he double bubbed you." So it's crazy, when they saw it, how it actually went down, they sort of changed their opinion a little bit.
That's wild. That's definitely, again, it's the passion that these fans have that. And what's cool is you'll see a lot of them get hooked into drag racing in general because of the show. And then guess what? That dude might be a rabid John Force fan screaming at Matt Hagan because he doesn't like the fact that Matt Hagan was John Force. That's what what people need to understand, what Street Outlaws brings to the table. It brings more people to drag racing.
I definitely agree with that. I've had many people message me, what would you do to this car? What engine would you put in this car, or what rear end? A lot of people that have never been into, motorsports at all, or any kind of classic cars or hot rods. I'm getting calls and they're buying parts, and they're, I think it's good for our industry as a whole. There's a lot of people doing a lot of things with cars that I don't think would have been doing it.
Exactly. Well, we're going to take another quick break here on the Dragzine Podcast. When we come back, we got more with Scott Taylor here right on the Dragzine Podcast.
Add serious horsepower under the hood of your 2018 to 2021 Ford Mustang GT 5.0 Coyote V8 engine with a new system that requires no modifications from Edelbrock products. The new E4 Stage 2 supercharger for the 2018 to 2021 Mustang GT 5.0 Coyote V8 utilizes the high-efficiency Eaton TVS 2650 rotor assembly with a high-twist lobe design, along with larger bearings and more robust timing gears to deliver an ultra-smooth and linear torque curve with more usable performance at all points in the power band. This kit includes a 103mm throttle body, high-flow 113mm air intake system, upgraded 50 pound-per-hour port fuel injectors, an 8-rib supercharger belt drive, and a plug-and-play fuel pump voltage booster. A black powder coated finish provides the ultimate underhood appeal that installs easily without modifying the hood and makes an excellent bolt-on investment. You can learn more about the Edelbrock's E-Force Stage 2 Supercharger Kit for the Ford Mustang GT 5.0 2018 to 2021 V8 engines at edelbrock.com.
All right, we're back with Scott Taylor talking No Prep Kings, all kinds of fun stuff. Now, you were doing the Dirty South deal for a while. Are you guys still doing that?
We are. We just had one in Odessa, Texas. I think I won the race, but I think that may be the first one of my own races I've ever won. But I won over in Odessa with a new car. That was the first win with it. We didn't have a great turnout, but we had a good turnout. We had a good racer support and a decent amount of spectators. We had a good time over there. It was opening day of deer season, and they had a few things going on in that town, but it was a good event. We used to do, 5, 6, 7 a year, but with No Prep Kings, it's been tough. I mean, when there's 15 No Prep Kings races, there's no time for Dirty South. So unfortunately, we're only going to do 2 next year. We're going to do one at the end of February at Gulfport Dragway. And then the other one is to be determined, but it's going to be in Texas.
See, I got to go to when I worked for Speed Video, we did one of the Dirty South races at Hub City. And that was like the first big no prep race I actually went to. And again, the atmosphere at these smaller promotions like that, when I say smaller versus something like a No Prep Kings or Outlaw Armageddon or, one of the really big races, the smaller events bring out just as many, I think, fans. And to me, it's like an NHRA divisional race because you get a lot more of the, we'll call them the sportsman no prep racers that might not go to a bigger race because they don't feel they're competitive, but they want to come out and participate. And it's really wild to see.
Yeah, we had a good time with it. And that's how we sort of set out to do, was give everybody a fair shake at racing. And we do the real deal no preps. I mean, it's we're not showing up to a racetrack that was glued 3 days before. It's everything that I do, me and Mike and Chad for as Dirty South. It's when you get there, it's going to be a real tricky no prep surface to go down. And that's what makes people interested in it.
And the fact that Mike's involved, which is pretty much take any semblance of sanity and just throw it out the window, because Mike Murillo is one of the, when you say character in racing, that guy, I had to do, it was actually one of that Dirty South race. I had to do, there was some downtime. I forget what happened. They're like, do a live interview with Mike. I had never done anything like this before. And that was pretty much like, there's no, how did Ricky Bobby describe it in Talladega? It was like I was floating outside of my body, and literally that's what it was like. It was like, what's going on here? Because Mike's just all over the place.
You never know what he's going to say at any given moment. I don't care if you're in front of a church or small children. You never know what's coming out of Mike Murillo's mouth. Me and him were taking a picture with a lady, and we're always poking fun at each other about being bigger. And he leans his head forward, and the lady's in the middle of us, and he leans his head forward and looks at me, and he says, "Suck it up, Buttercup." Well, the lady sucked in real quick, and we both died laughing. We wasn't talking to her, or he wasn't talking to her. So you never know what's coming out of Mike Murillo's mouth.
Oh, 110%. Mike is the kind of person that will say what's on his mind and then ask for forgiveness and say he's sorry after it's happened.
Absolutely. That's his whole motto, actually.
And as I'm sure that the Discovery team, when they go over to him, it's like they say a Hail Mary. They're like, all right, let's see where this is going to go. And it just
absolutely never know what direction he's going.
No, you don't know where it's going to happen. And that's what makes it fun. And that, I think, is what represents like no prep racing, the Dirty South, and all that is in general, is just the outlaw, unpredictable nature of it.
Absolutely. It's you never know what you're going to get. That's a fact.
Yeah. It's like literally, it's like a box of those random chocolates. It's either going to be a tasty treat inside, or you're going to be biting into a atomic sour. You don't know.
Yeah, it's almost like bamboozled.
Yeah. Now, kind of going off of that, No Prep Kings, Street Outlaws has been massive. Literally thousands of fans at events, a huge global following. You mentioned you're in your seventh contractual year. What's it been like to be on this rocket ship? Looking back now to kind of look at it from a higher level, you're literally being a part of history. What's that been like?
It's been really good. It took a little bit of getting used to. I mean, far as the spectators and fan side of things, I never thought that anybody would want my autograph. I mean, never in a million years. I mean, I'm just an old street racer / bracket racer. Anything that had four wheels, I was racing it. And to get to this level, I feel like, it's been a huge blessing. Right place at the right time kind of deal, and it's been great. I had no idea that it would ever go this far. And one thing it did do, it allowed us to improve with our equipment. I had 700 horsepower engines, 14, in 2014, 2015. And now we got 3,200 horsepower engines. So that side of it, it really improved our program is what it did.
And again, it comes down to the fans and getting to, like you said, your kids are going to get to tell stories. Imagine, flash so many years in the future when your kids have to do an icebreaker at work and they say, they say 2 truths and a lie. And they have to, my dad was a famous drag racer and we did all this stuff, and people are going to go, oh, that's the lie. And then they can bring up like, oh, really? And they just bring, they're like, Google search my dad. That's gotta be pretty cool.
It's they definitely have a if I was a kid and got to do what they do, it would be awesome. So I'm thankful they get to travel with me some and get to do these things, because it's they have an amazing childhood.
Do they have the racing bug too?
Believe it or not, they like watching. They haven't really showed me that they want to race yet. I actually got them a junior dragster, and believe it or not, they didn't show a ton of interest in it. And that's one thing I'm not going to do. I'm not going to force them to do it. So I think when they get a little bit older, they probably will, but they're 11 now, so they like it. And believe it or not, my son just come out in the shop a minute ago and helped me for a few minutes while I worked on the car, and he's starting to show a little bit of interest now. So
some people have to, put away for a college fund. You might have to start putting away for a pro mod fund.
That's right. Hey, by the time he's about 18 or so, I'll be ready to let him drive one of these things and I'll watch.
And you know what? Honestly, the best part about that is that it's a great way to keep your kids out of trouble when they're into racing in cars, because they're only going to be at probably 3 places: home, working on the car, or at a job funding the car / racing
Absolutely.
the car.
Absolutely. I guarantee you these race cars kept me out of a lot of trouble. I mean, when I was younger, I used to like to go out, and like all young kids, I like to go out and party and do things with their friends and go out to the club. And then as soon as I really got going into racing, I was about 19 when I started really getting into cars, like fast cars. I was spending every dime I had on them. So there went the clubbing, there went the going out. If we was going to do something, it was going to be my friends coming over to work on a car, because we didn't have no money to go anywhere else.
Oh, and racers, it was funny. My wife and I went on a trip to Chimney Rock National Park or State Park in North Carolina. I was wearing some Dragzine gear. Random person in the elevator goes, "Are you into drag racing?" Told her what I did. And, she's like, "Oh, my husband races this, that, and the other." She looks at my wife and goes, "Racer wives need a support group for what we have to go through." And I was going to say something, but at the same time, I was like, you know what? She's right to a certain point. But I was like, also, you need to look at it as a blessing, because it's a built-in babysitting service for your husband. He's not out drinking whiskey and, chasing women. He's in a fine.
That's right. And I agree. The wives really, really do go through it and put up with a lot from us. In 2000, the first time my wife went me to the racetrack, was girlfriend at the time, but she went with me to the track, and I made about $350 a week in 2000. That was the year I graduated. It's my first job, my first real job, full-time job. Made $350 a week, and we went to a racetrack, and it was a 2-day race, and we stayed in a tent. So she's put up with me, and we've come a long way from there. So she definitely deserves an award just for putting up with me.
That's why when people ask me, why are you doing such and such thing? I'm like, listen, my wife puts up with a ridiculous amount of stuff between me and my delinquent friends. If she wants me to go to a Broadway show, if we're going hiking, we're going to a state park, guess what? When mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. And that doesn't mean you get to go racing. So you got to make sure and take care of mama, right?
Absolutely. She's been good, stuck by my side. We've been slap broke, racing these cars, and then we've been, on the better side of things. So she hangs in there good and bad, and that's what you're supposed to do. So,
well, we're winding things down here, and I always like to have fun with my guests and ask all kind of crazy questions and, kind of mix things up. So your question for you, Scott, my question for you is, you have to build the ultimate no prep team as an owner. You can't drive. You get to be the Don Schumacher of no prep racing. You get to assemble this crack team that's going to go out, snap necks, collect checks. Who's going to drive? Who's going to tune? Who do you want to have on that crew that that are no prep racer crews? Because Lord knows we got some characters and some good wrench tuners out there. And you get to pick a car. Whose car are you racing with? So who's your driver? Who's your tuner? Who's your crew guy? And what's your ride?
I'd probably have to go with Daniel Foshar as the driver. He's actually on my crew now, and I let him drive the John Doe car sometimes on small tires. But he's probably one of the best drivers that I've seen out there that just hasn't got a huge break. He does really, really well. His brother is my tuner, so I've got to say Craig Foshar is a tuner. But I would add one in there with it, man. He is just a legend. But Steve Petty, man, is awesome. Put those two together and it'd be great. And then I would keep my same crew. Art has done great for me. And I'd probably add in a few more. Randy Williams guy that he brings with him does really well. And that guy, he's going places. Todd Butterfield. I may have said his last name wrong, but his name's Todd. And he does great, but that would be my all-star team. And on the car, that's a tricky one. If I had to just pick the fastest car out there, I hate to say it, but I'd probably have to pick Ryan Martin's car, man. He does good. He's the only person that I can say consistently beats me more than I beat him. If I didn't have my own car, which I like my car, but if I didn't have my car, it'd probably be his, the one I'd pick.
Fair enough. That sounds like a killer crew. And like Ryan's stuff's like clockwork. Javi does a great job keeping that thing going. I mean, those guys, like, they are good across the board, because a lot of people seem to forget that Ryan just didn't appear in the drag racing scene. He did a lot of racing before, and he's gone some round Ducks races too. He's an all-around driver. Those guys got their act together.
Absolutely. He's a good driver. And talking about an all-star team like that, it's tough. It would be tough for me to own a team, that I didn't drive for. But if I had to pick somebody, if I'm not driving, I'd want Daniel Foshar driving, but I definitely would want to be driving.
Yeah, it's hard to stop that itch, right?
Yeah, it's like pick a driver beside yourself. That's like, man, that's hard.
Well, Scott, our time here is coming to a close on the Dragzine Podcast, and I like to give my guests their opportunity to channel their inner John Force and make sure they thank all their sponsors, tell people where to learn about their cars, where they're racing and whatnot. So, Scott, the floor is yours, my friend. Tell people who helps you, where they can go to learn more about you, and what you got going
on. All of our social media stuff on Facebook, Scott Taylor Motorsports. We also got a YouTube channel out, but definitely thank you to all of our sponsors. Keith Superstores, Boot Country, Iski, Pro Charger. There's tons and tons of people help us. That's our main sponsors. I don't want leave a ton of people out. Race Star is stepping in this year, and Renegade Fuels. But there's tons of sponsors. I'm sure I'm leaving them out, but check our page out, and we post our sponsors very often. And if y'all can use them, please do, because they support us, and that's what keeps this thing going. But our next stop right now is going street racing. So
definitely check out Scott's Facebook and website, because he definitely plugs all the sponsors on there, which is awesome. Got to give an extra shout out to Iski, Nolan Jamor. Been friends with Nolan for a while, worked with him. He is, you talk about a company that is steeped in racing. That dude goes to more races than some actual race drivers do. So they are definitely, they don't just talk about it, they are about it.
Absolutely, 100%. And he has come and stayed with me for 2 weeks of filming on the street. I mean, he's 100% in, and he takes care of a lot of racers.
Awesome. And of course, I've got to thank the sponsors. Allow me to come on here and have fun with people like Scott. Performance Distributors, Airflow Research, ProCharger, Holly, MSD, Flowmaster, Mosier Engineering, Comp Cams, Eldebrock, Fuel Air Spark Technology, Manly, JE Pistons, and Dart. Scott, it's been awesome having you on the show, and hopefully we'll see you soon at the track.
Man, I appreciate you having me on. You was a little bit more prepared on the sponsors than me, but I definitely want to thank all of our sponsors, and thank you for having me.
Talk to you soon, Scott.
All right, man.